James Swanwick here. Welcome to the show. I know many of our listeners here are trying to live an alcohol-free lifestyle, whether that means moderation, whether it means stopping entirely. But more than that, we're all trying to be better humans, aren't we? We're trying to be better with our health, both physical and mental. We want to be more present with our families. We want to wake up in the morning and just feel joy rather than waking up in the morning and feeling dread or tired or lethargic. Today, we're going to be talking to a new friend of mine, a fellow funny talker in the sense that he's Australian. He's from Fremantle in West Australia. His name is Rory Callaghan. He's 34, and he is an integrated health consultant who works with entrepreneurs and health professionals and coaches. And he's the author of a new book, which is called Self-Care, Lifestyle Medicine for the People. And Rory's about to share some great words of wisdom for us about self-care and about natural ways of healing ourselves. And Rory is also going to share a little bit about his alcoholic and absent father and what that was like growing up without a father and an alcoholic one at that. So Rory, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you share your experience and your story with our audience.
That's awesome, James, and thanks for having me, man. It's when we chatted about this, and I sat with the opportunity of jumping on this podcast. It made me realize that this topic is really important to me. And like you said, mate, it's I don't believe that alcoholism is I don't know. I just don't believe that. I think everything we understand about addiction is wrong. And I feel that, the concept of alcoholism, it's just a way to numb the mind, a way to suppress emotions and kind of distract ourselves from the life that we are living. And I'll tune into a couple of experiences that I did have over my lifetime. And hopefully for anyone listening, it might just inspire you to change something, and it doesn't mean that you need to, go cold turkey and completely change everything. But, you can just stop or swap a couple of things and you can add 14 years to your life. And most importantly, you can feel better and be more present with your family. So I kind of want to run with that line of thought, if that's cool, James.
Yeah. 14 years. 14 is a very specific number. You said if you get out of addiction, you can add 14 years to your life. Why 14?
It's just some research that's been done around self-harm. So there's, things like obviously, a lot of the fake foods that we eat, which lead to like digestive issues and a whole range of chronic inflammatory issues. Think of the sodas and the sugars and the type 2 diabetes and things like that. And also, the things like alcohol or tobacco and cigarettes and all these things that have actually been designed to be addictive, and the cool thing is if you just kind of take them out of your life, you can add 14 years to your life. So there's, like I said, in the self-care book, I made sure that all this was referenced, not just, thought leaders, but like systematic reviews and which are groups of very smart people that have spent 40 years of their life studying this to share that simple message. And I just become a vessel for that. So, the cool news is it's not about going cold turkey. It's like, even if you just swap it, Sardinia in Italy is home to the oldest living men. And, one of their rituals, the average lifespan is 90 to 100 plus, and they enjoy a couple of glasses of red wine every day, connecting with friends and family, but they just don't drink in excess. And obviously the wine comes from really good soil. It's not full of nasties and sugars and things like that. So the concept of healthy moderation and, it's just plants in the end, what's the vodkas and the stuff comes from potatoes and the wine comes from grapes. So it's more about what we do with these kind of, these tools that we have in life, like alcohol and why we use them, so that's where it comes from.
Yeah. Just before we get into some practical ways in which we can live healthier lives and some of the research that you found for your book, tell us a little bit about you growing up, about your father, about how you were raised and what it was like to have an alcoholic and then ultimately absent father.
Yeah, and even the mental construct of having an alcoholic father, I don't feel like I had an alcoholic father. I had a father that suffered from alcoholism. And like the day I was born, I'm well aware that as soon as I took my first breath, I was a 1 in 4 trillion chance of being born. So, understanding that meant that I was a miracle, like we all are, every single one of us. And that one thought, every day I wake up and I take a deep breath, I'm like, cool, another day I get to live, another miracle. And it kind of bypasses all the stuff that happens after that first breath. It just keeps taking me back to like each day is a new start, a new reset. I get to live it in a specific way. I get to change things. I get to grow. I get to resist, suppress. And I know that what I kind of like resist is the thing that persists in my life. And I know for my dad, he was 27 when he had me, and my mum was 44. And his story, very short, in a short version, is basically that my grandma's side on that side is German, so they moved to they basically sought immigration from Germany through to Australia, and they were settled in Renmark in South Australia, and that's a very sleepy town. There's not a lot going on, not a lot of purpose. So there's a lot of boredom. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and 3 out of 4 of my dad's siblings became alcoholics. So straight away, like, oh, it's genetic. And it's like, no, it's not genetic. It's environmental, and the Australian culture kind of backs it up in a big way, because we love to drink, and we're convicts at heart. So it's always been part of our kind of ancestral history, and it's become normalized, and, we kind of drink for the weekends. But after I was born, my dad had just broken free from that environment. And he was an artist, and he was traveling, and he moved to Perth, Western Australia, around the time of the America's Cup. And that's when he met my mum. And he, like, for anyone that's broken free of the environment they grew up in, whether it was something that did or didn't serve you, having the courage to do that is the biggest thing, or the biggest force for change. If a flower doesn't blossom and bloom in the way that nature intended, you don't try to fix a flower, you change the environment. So innately, he knew something, and he started to come alive. And when he had me, he was so happy. But at the same time, he wasn't ready. 27, 44-year-old mum. It was completely unexpected. So it kind of hit him. He didn't have the tools, mentally and emotionally to kind of, and I spoke to him later in life about this, to kind of deal with that. And it kind of led him into this downward cycle. And one thing that he didn't share with a lot of people, and I only found out a couple of years ago, is the reason. I was like, Dad, why did you become an alcoholic? Why do you drink? And he told me a story of when his dad passed away. He was the only one that cared for him, and he was the one that was by his side every single day. And his dad said to him, months before he was about to pass away, he's like, my dad's name's Rory. He's like, go live your life. I want you to go live. I want you to go, like, do what lights your heart up. And he's an artist, so he went chasing that dream. And as soon as he left, what happened is he left a bit of a hole where then the rest of the family had to now support their father in the dying days. And in a normal family or a normal environment, it would be like, well done, Rolly, like, you've done your part, and your dad has told you to go live your life, go do it. We've got this for the last 2 months. But instead they blamed him for his father's death. And for whatever reason, he believed that to be true. And this is where belief changes biology. If he had just somehow along the way met someone like you and me, and someone had shifted that belief, he wouldn't have had this underlying thought that he was the cause of his dad's death, which led to all these emotions are negative, but this guilt, this shame, which then led to the triggers to drink. And then that was kind of the journey, and then as a result, from the age of 1 to 2, like, I had a single mom, and my dad was absent. And he ended up growing up. I ended up growing up with my dad homeless in the streets where I grew up. And having an absent father, my mum was pretty smart. She taught me a lot of beautiful lessons, man. Like, if you want one solution to all of this, from anyone whose family member might be going through some stuff or alcoholism, is that, the antidote to apathy is compassion and empathy. And she always told me how much of an amazing artist my father was. She never told me that he was an alcoholic. She never told me all the terrible things that happened when he had too many drinks. But I also knew that she was partially responsible, because she would always trigger him. I'd sit there in days when he would come over, and, he'd be happy in the morning, and, one little jab, and then another one, like 40, 50 little emotional jabs later, and eventually gets him. And by that stage, he's, 20 beers deep, and he reacts in a way that he probably regrets. And but then it's like, well, is that reaction my dad's fault, or is that my mum's fault for instigating it and trying to, like, bring out the worst in someone? And that was something I had to reconcile for a while because, the police would get called. And then, of course, my dad, would get taken away. And then my mum would put a restraining order on him. So in the eyes of society, it's like the man did the thing wrong. But I'm a young kid watching this, and I'm like, Dad was happy in the morning. And then just being in this environment and being around like this type of thing where there's whatever's going on between them, it's just this and that. But there's something core that brought my mum and my dad there, which was me. So like it was just an interesting environment to grow up with. And I guess, growing up with a dad, I lacked that masculine energy in my life. And so I had a really beautiful, compassionate mother, but it probably made me like overly sensitive. And because I had a single mum, I learned to do everything myself. And she was very stressed as well. So then it was like, I'm trying to navigate the emotional things that are going on there as a young kid and trying to like create my own emotional container. And it led to, a lot of different habits and things I had to break later in life. When you start dealing with things in your 30s and 40s, you're like, holy shit, it goes back to your childhood. That was a big thing for me. And I guess the most key moment was when I was about 13 and mum put me in an all boys school, got me playing football to make sure I had a masculine environment growing up and a few really healthy men to like feed off and to learn from. And football kind of saved me. That was the thing that, it distracted me. It was something I was good at. It was something I could work on. Something that made me feel good. And, going to an all boys school, it gave me discipline. I was a rat bag. I was so cheeky, because I had too much freedom. So she gave me these safe containers. So mum was a real hero of the journey. And then I remember when I was 13, I was walking down the street with my buddies after school, got my blazer on, it's a full private school gear. And I saw this dude just laying on the side of the street with a beer bottle and my friends started laughing and, pointing, and I kind of laughed as well. And I was completely unaware of the circumstance at the time. And then I kind of walked past and I looked over and I was like, shit. I was like, that's my dad. And it's like, I don't know if anyone's ever experienced something like this, but as a 13-year-old, the immediate thing is like hide, fear, run, be embarrassed. But my mum taught me something beautiful by the way that she always spoke of him, even though she'd been through the pain. It was always compassion and love and empathy. So I had a moment, James, and I just remember I just had to decide, and this changed my life forever. And I had to decide to walk on by or to go over and say good day to the person that gave me life. Without him, I wouldn't be here. So I walked on over and I said, hey, Dad. And he kind of looked up with a really dreary gaze and beer bottle by his side and, money sprawled out on the floor. And I was like, are you okay? And he was like, he wasn't even coherent, And I just gave him a big hug and just told him that I loved him. And then I kept on going. And I didn't realize at the time, but that also changed my friends' lives because they saw the way that I acted and reacted to that situation. They saw my heart, they saw my compassion. And, after that point, we never laughed at anyone that was homeless on the streets. Like we never did it. And if anything, we became more giving and more sharing. I teamed up with St. Patrick's in Fremantle who down the track who were like a homeless shelter. And they were the ones that I didn't know until later down the track were the ones that kept my dad alive. That's where he'd go, when he had nowhere else to turn. And so it just made me realize that it takes a community to heal the sick. And sickness is more than just physical or mental or emotional. It's a whole range of things, James. So that's probably a good place to stop, mate. But that's the first part of the journey, which really got me, thinking about this topic and then relating it to my own life.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that and giving us a glimpse into your childhood. That must have been so impactful for you and led to a lot of the choices I would imagine you have made subsequently in your adult life. Can you draw a line back to that and see how that has shaped who you are today?
100%. So like growing up without a dad and a single mom who's, working her ass off to make sure paycheck to paycheck, I've got everything I need. Again, she chose that. Again, my dad chose that. We all choose the path that we're on. And I always thought, mum was, I was kind of mad at her that she never kind of like, created like a really stable environment like my friends had. But she traveled the world for 20 years as an air hostess, in the 60s and 70s. She had me at 44, remember? So it was such an interesting thing to navigate as a kid, because I was kind of like angry at my mom. I was kind of like embarrassed by my dad, but then learning the lessons along the way. Like I learned that, my mom gave me the shirt off her back when she had nothing, and she would, even though she chose it, what she chose was to have a child. And at the time she had to give up her job as a managerial role, because they didn't have what's it called? Where you get like 6 months off after work.
Maternity leave.
There was no maternity leave. And if anything, her boss said, you've got a choice. You either abort the child or you keep your job. So when she told me that, and she chose to have me and chose to bring me up in this sense of hardship that I thought I had, only to realize later that it wasn't the case. I had unconditional love. I had all my needs met. It wasn't perfect compared to my friends, but that comparison was a thief of a lot of joy for me for a long time. And I guess after that, mum at about 13 or 14, she said, we paid off our mortgage, and she said, I think she'd realized things had been kind of tough and we were debt free. And she came home one day with 2 round the world tickets, or 3 round the world tickets, and said, you know what, boys, life's for living. So she took me around the world. She showed me the world, I ended up in Bali. That's probably why I'm here now, James, because I love this community and culture. I was in Thailand. I saw a young girl, dying of malaria and feeling so helpless. Then I was in the Champs-Elysees in Paris, checking out, deciding whether I wanted a Big Mac or to go see the Mona Lisa at the Louvre, and I chose the Big Mac. And then next thing in the Champs-Elysees in Paris, it's like, there's a lady who bought some shoes for like 1,000 francs or euros at the time. And I found out the medication for this kid was only for the malaria treatment was like 6 cents. And I started going, well, one pair of shoes is like 10,000 lives, So she showed me the world. And then I came back at 13 or 14. And I remember the comparison, my mates with Nike shoes, and I had Target T-shirts and all that type of stuff. I didn't care anymore, it was just so irrelevant. It's like she just gave me, like I had this little map of reality. It was me and my little container. And I kind of realized later in life that until the age of 25, I grew up in a 200-kilometer radius of where I was born. And I thought I knew a thing or two about the world. And this is so relevant for people, because I'm sure that if you really step back and look at, there was a little trip here and a little trip there, but you spend 95% of your life in the exact same environment that you were born. And what mum did is showed me the full map. And she goes, here it is. I just wanted to show you. Now you make up your own lives and your own experiences. And she gave me permission to draw out the lines, which was really good. But then also what I realized is that having a single mum is, I felt a need to prove myself, a lack of self-worth and all that type of stuff. So I put it into my work. And by the age of 25, I was working 100 hours a week as a physio, first person in my family to go to university. Didn't feel like there was anything more than that. And then I had a beautiful mentor, Kerry, who's like, man, you can do more here. You got high distinctions and distinctions. Like, you're made for more, dude. So I had these like core little people like my mom and Kerry, and just these people that believed in me more than myself along the way, that just kept on inspiring me, empowering me to level up. I know, James, that's what you're doing with the listeners now. You're inspiring and empowering people to level up and to do something different, and just being that kind of constant for them. And just sharing different stories and narratives that might just spark something where they change. And so these people changed things along my life. And then by 27, 28, I was working with in WA with East Fremantle Football Club, and then I was working towards AIS and the Fremantle Dockers and things like that, and already had a foot in the door, already there. I was one of the youngest senior physios for the club, and I was like, 100 hours a week, building hip and groin rehab programs, prove myself. And then mum's in the background. She's like, Rory, you're burning the wick at both ends. And I remember reading something, and it was like, if you had an alcoholic father or mother, that you're 5 times more likely to have alcohol dependence later in life. And I didn't think that was me. I played footy, but, playing football, you still go get hammered every Saturday after the game and Sunday, and going through university, like drinking was a culture. And it was something that if you weren't drinking, you were kind of like pushed into doing it, because it was like everyone else is doing it. This is how we have fun. I want to go surf. I want to do other things. I didn't want to do that. And I guess like what it led, the big aha moment for me was when I was just about to burn out, and I had this Wednesday night, and I had I was like an iPhone battery on like 5%. That iPhone battery that keeps on, like you charge it and then it's already like depleted by 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So then I was needing naps during the day, and But then at night, my brain was just like, because of adrenal fatigue, it was like there was so many tabs open, and even though I was so freaking tired, I couldn't sleep. So then I started, like, I had this one night, and I just realized, like, I was drinking a whole bottle of red wine to myself on a Wednesday night as a health professional to go to sleep. And I remember that moment. I was like, dude, what are you doing? This isn't you, And I was like, and I felt so incongruent. And then 6 months later, I burnt out and I couldn't get out of bed. And that was the moment where, like, everything changed, because I wasn't healthy. I wasn't happy. I didn't feel connected. I didn't have any time. I hadn't been on a surf trip in 5 years. I was just like, I was so busy being busy, proving myself from all this stuff. And then I was using alcohol to suppress the stress and help me sleep and suppress emotions. And then I just became a lot like my dad, just for a short period. But having that story and having that self-realization, that moment to pivot and change, that pain point, that part of the hero's journey that everyone resists. Like, we think pain is like a negative emotion. For me, all emotions are welcome now. But at the time, I was like, suppress, move on, suppress, keep going, suppress, keep going, suppress, keep going. And then eventually one day I just embraced it. And I was like, okay, what are you teaching me, universe? It was like a little tap on the shoulder. Then it was a slap on the face. And on this day, it was like a baseball bat and I couldn't move. And I remember that was the moment where things changed. And I just, ask yourself these 3 questions. Like, are you actually happy? Like truly happy? Like, when was the last time you laughed? That was a question I asked myself. When was the last time you smiled? When was the last time you just felt light and vibrant? They weren't carrying anything. And it's like, are you healthy? And I was like, man, am I restricted? I was falling asleep on the way to football training. I'd lost muscle mass, like the dark rings under my eyes. I couldn't even get through the day without needing 2 or 3 naps. I'm like, this is not normal. And I was connected, and I was like, well, I haven't seen my family. I live around the corner. I haven't seen them in months. I had a girlfriend for 5 years at the time. We were slowly drifting apart, and I didn't even realize it. And also, I just didn't feel connected to myself and my passion, my purpose. I was just doing what society told me to do, get a job, buy a house, all that type of stuff. And deep down, I knew it wasn't right, but I was almost about to pull the trigger. Yeah, so this pivot point changed everything. And then it became the journey of self-care, which was just learning to teach what I most, learning. We all teach what we mostly learn ourselves, right? So I had to learn this for myself. I had to go through a 2-year journey, feel normal again. I left the healthcare system, came out of it. And then I looked back down in this like big rabbit hole, and I was like, shit, like 19 out of 20 people that I care about are living with some form of chronic disease or dysfunction. And like their quality of life was being reduced. So we got 700, maybe 800,000 hours if we're lucky. And it was like people were just making choices that were reducing that by 14 years. Time's the most valuable resource, James. So I was like, what if we could just, find that healthy medium, go have some fun, have some healthy moderation, choose your lifestyle, but we can do it in a way where you at least get to optimize the amount of hours you get. And then how you choose to spend those hours is completely up to you. If you want to do a job that is mind numbing and, building someone else's dream at the expense of your own, go do it. If you want to like be in a relationship that doesn't serve you, like do it. But it's like you're choosing that. At any time, you can do what my dad did. You can change environment. You can do what I did. You can make a shift. You can make a change. And it's like just knowing that like 95% of those choices are within our control, but it's not driven consciously. It's subconsciously from our past experience and our past like stories and traumas. And then it's like this gut instinct, this heart, So if we kind of get out of here and come back to here, the path becomes really clear, because we start chasing, what environments do I go to where I leave feeling better? Who do I hang out with and I leave feeling better? Where do I feel happy? Where do I feel healthy? Where do I feel connected? Where do I feel more in flow, more aligned? And for me, it was Bali. And that's why I changed the environment and came here, James. And, that they're kind of like the parallels, like flipping back to today is basically knowing that I chose everything, radical responsibility. No one wants to admit it. But when you do, the truth is so freaking powerful. And it involves some courageous conversations with your friends and partners. Like, I was in a daze for years. I'm so sorry, and they're like, don't be sorry, man. Like we knew we were trying to like support and help you, but you need to figure it out for yourself. And I needed that pain point to shift and pivot. In the same way that we had the pandemic for the last 2 years, we had a global pain point, and we are forced to shift and change. So it happens on an individual level, a family level, a community level, a collective level. And if we start to like really embrace these feelings, these emotions, these things that come up, rather than suppressing them or sweeping them under the rug, then it's like the lesson is in plain sight. And then we can choose to realign it. Like pain's just being like, yo, your true north is here, or you're heading west or south, or like real far south. And if I go too far, it goes bang, baseball bat, and then like flips me back the other way. and if I'm a bit more tuned in, I'm like, oh, that's kind of like conflict or pain. And I'm like, oh, course recorrect, course recorrect. And I keep heading toward a true north, which is relevant to me. And the path is different for me, to you, to my partner, Ruby. Everyone's got their own version of their ideal life and lifestyle, this dream in their mind, the person they want to be, the person they know they're born to be. So I guess these podcasts, James, and these stories are just little reminders of that. And I think that's all I want to be for people, is just a little reminder that, if you and feel into it. If you're over here, cool, change something, come back. And we might talk about some solutions after this.
Yeah, before we wrap up the episode and later on, I want to make sure that we find out what happened to your relationship with your dad and also with your mum. We'll come back to that. Before then, into your book, Self-Care, Lifestyle Medicine for the People. And you did reference before that 95% of our choices are driven by the subconscious. But then there's 5%. That leaves us with 5% that we can drive with with our conscious mind. And I'm assuming that a lot of the things that you talk about in self-care, in the book, Self-Care, Lifestyle Medicine for the People, are practical things that we can do to design our environment, to have radical responsibility, to take ownership of our health, both physically and mentally. So why don't we talk a little bit about some practical things that you think our listeners can be made aware of, practical actions that we can take to ensure that we are living the best life possible?
Yeah, I think it all depends where you're at, James. Like, we're all starting at different starting points. But if you understand it, like, what is the trigger to drink? What is the trigger for self-harm? What is the trigger to do something that deep down doesn't serve you? You feel it every single day when you wake up and you're foggy and you're groggy. You go out and get hammered on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you have a bender, and then all of a sudden you're just becoming, finding some sense of normality on Wednesday. And it's like you rinse and repeat. And once we kind of break that cycle, it's so hard to break it once you're in it. But like I said before, it takes a community to heal the sick. When my dad was in that daze, he can't break out of that. He doesn't even know where to start, But the fact that there are people and community and support around him, connection is the elixir to longevity, James. That is the primary thing. So it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a community to heal the sick. So the biggest reason why a lot of people fall into alcoholism and things like that is isolation, disconnection. And then there's usually some pain points or some traumas, and they don't have the emotional capacity. They try to suppress it, right? And I want you to feel more and suppress less. Feel it all, welcome it all. It's not negative or positive. It's just feelings, it's emotions. It's trying to tell you something, but your head gets in the way and creates these stories or lives in the past or does this stuff. But it's like, as soon as we switch that off, we come back here. So there's one thing I like, the book kind of finishes with, James, which is like this concept of building by 1% a day. And it's so relevant. I've run health businesses with 50,000 customers. We've done 30-day challenges, 16-week challenges. They're all cool, but it's a lot of people failed because it's like there's something deep down that's missing. And it's like you either have to be black or white. There can't be like this gradual increase over time. It has to be like all or nothing. And I think that mentality and being marketed to that, rather than it being like a lifelong thing over your lifestyle, starting where you are, and then picking a vision and then slowly walking towards that bit by bit by bit by bit. We'll overestimate what we can do in a year, but in 5 years, man, we can change anything. So like the one thing I want to share with practical tips is build by 1% a day. Tomorrow, stop or swap. One thing, you want to get up in the morning and you want to, have a cigarette. Go for a surf instead. Tell me if it feels better. Have a cigarette after you surf. I don't care, but do the surf first. If you want to, go out or like with dinner, you want to drink, you feel like you're stressed after a busy day, so many tabs open, your boss has been an asshole. You come home and you're in that vibe and it creates conflict with your wife or your partner or whatever. And you're like, oh, I'm just going to drink, because that's the trigger. You know what I mean? Stress. And then it's like, but instead you go for a walk with your partner down the beach. You change one thing that could change the entire energy and vibe of the day. Rather than drinking coffee, you might drink water or tea or juice. One thing. And shit, if you do it 1 day out of 7 days, epic. It's better than the week before. And so the key thing is like to master your morning, and then you can win your day. That's the Elrod thing. and the James Clear Build by 1%. So I'm referencing some really beautiful people here that are having massive impacts in the world. And a framework that I give people is this like golden triangle. So do something for the mind, something for movement, something for food and nourishment, and then make sure there's a sense of connection. So as an example, if you are in a low vibing space, podcast. If you can't, like, if you're a little, that 3-to-1 negative bias in your mind is going nuts, put in a podcast, listen to it for 20 minutes. Maybe James's podcast is a great way to start. Listen to one a day. Listen to one a week. I don't care. Go for a walk down the beach. Movement distracts the mind. You kind of, rather than laying in bed and jumping on social media, it's like every hour to 2 hours that you spend behind a computer, your mental health declines at a rapid rate. So just by changing that one thing, podcast, something for the mind. If you want to journal and just get everything out, do it. If you want to do voice notes to yourself and get everything out, do it. But it's just something for the mind, something for movement. If you love going to the gym, go to the gym. If you love doing Tai Chi, do Tai Chi. If you love doing yoga, do yoga. Something where you can do like 30 minutes or 21 minutes at least of just moving your body, getting blood circulating, getting breath in, getting oxygen. The key to healing is oxygen, blood flow, water, and they're like the core elements. And then food, which is nourishment, they're the spark plugs. If you can go mostly plant-based, I'm not like a vegan warrior, things like that. It's about the quality of the food, the quality of the soil. We are like compassionate carnivores by evolution. But the thing is, what we do know right now is if you eat mostly plants, like an 80%, think about your juices, it doesn't have to be these disgusting meals. It could be like a plant-based smoothie bowl or something like that in the morning. It could be a juice and a glass of water. You know what I mean? It can be your coffee. That's a plant with almond milk. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be this really big thing, right? It doesn't have to be a massive change. But if you get mostly plants in, at least, you need about 1 liter per 22 kilos of body weight of water a day. Most people die of dehydration over their lifespan. That's the craziest thing that I learned. You die of dehydration. It's like the core element, dehydration and oxygen. So it's like if somehow you move, you get breath in, and you get blood flowing, you hydrate in the morning. Even just that, I think, that'll kick ass in the food paradigm. And then something for the mind, like a podcast, so you can just balance that 3-to-1 negative bias and swing it across to here. My little negative bias is called Daryl. He's an asshole. He limits me with everything in my life. And I got Martha, who's like that grandma that just loves you and believes in you and thinks you can do everything. The podcast just starts making me listen to the voice rather than the noise. So something for the mind, something for movement. Movement is the best thing for the mind. It distracts it. It gets it moving. And then something for food and nourishment, something as simple as water. And now with connection, if you go do it by yourself, epic. If you can do it with a partner, you do it with a friend, go surf with a friend, walk with your wife. You get that 20 minutes in the morning, walk with your husband. You get that minute, that time just to connect without the family, without the work, without the business, without being on the phones. So that's a real simple tip is that little master your morning rituals, James. That's a really beautiful tip. And if everyone gets that, builds by 1%, you'll be 37x ahead of where you started. And no challenges, no anything. Just be better. It's you versus you. Be better than the person you were the day before.
This podcast is sponsored by my eyewear and sleep optimization company, Swanwick. If you suffer eye strain from computer use, you find it challenging to focus and concentrate, your sleep is poor, you have low energy, you're tired and sometimes experience anxiety, then it could be because you're staring into screens all day and night. Swanwick produces stylish blue light blocking glasses to help you sleep better and generate more energy and focus during the day. A Harvard University and University of Washington published study revealed that Swannies wearers reported sleeping 14% better during the night and were 9% more productive during the day. That's huge. Swannies are currently worn as a sleep and performance aid by professional athletes at teams including the Dallas Cowboys, New York Knicks, Manchester United, and many more. They've been featured on media including The Dr. Oz Show, Live with Kelly and Ryan, and The New York Times. I personally designed Swannies back in 2015, and they've now helped almost 200,000 people sleep and perform better. And because you're a listener of the Alcohol-Free Lifestyle podcast, you can now get your pair and enjoy 15% off. To get the best blue light blocking glasses on the market, go to swannies.com and enter code JAMES at checkout for 15% off. That's swannies.com and enter code JAMES at checkout for 15% off. Build by 1%, stop or swap. Movement distracts the mind. Oxygen, blood flow, water. I was doing the math there when you said you drink a liter for every
22 kilos of body weight.
22 kilos of body weight. So I'm usually around 85 kilos. So that means I'm needing to drink almost 4 liters of water each day. Yeah. Okay, got it.
But plants are 80 to 95% water, and people forget that. So if you have a plant-based diet and you're getting like teas and like you're getting water through what you consume each day as well. So yes, like, man, if you have a 1 liter water bottle, you fill it up 3 times in a day. That is such a simple thing. Just do it for a week and tell me how you feel.
I was saying this on an earlier podcast episode, actually, that swimming laps in a pool for me knocks over 3 things in a row, which is meditation, because I'm staring at the black line at the bottom of the pool and I go into a meditative state. Exercise, because I'm moving my body and stretching my body, especially when you're doing freestyle, you're kind of stretching out. It's really good. And because you're not running, there's no bounce there's no pressure on the joints on the body there. So exercise. And then breath work as well, because every 3 strokes I'm having to go and then hold my breath while my face is underwater while I'm exercising. And then I come up and breathe in again. So it's kind of like, it's like quote unquote forced breath work. And some people will go to breathwork classes, for example, and sit there and have it be, have someone walk you through that, or you can try to do it on your own. I find it quite challenging to do a breath session by myself, just sitting still. But for me, swimming laps in a pool, or just swimming, even swimming in the ocean for that matter, knocks over exercise, meditation, breath work, and you could also say nature, getting out in nature. So it's like a quadruple threat.
Yeah. And it's really good to touch on, man, because it's like, I think a lot of people have been sitting in chairs for 8 to 10 years of their day thinking that that's normal since the technological revolution. And we are not made to sit in a 90-degree position for 8 or 9 hours a day and then go lay in bed and then drive the car home. It's like, it's so funny that the recommendation right now is to get 21 minutes of movement in your day. Like literally just change driving the car to work, get public transport. You've already solved it. Ride the bike to work. You put a podcast in whilst you go, you start to kick 2 or 3 boxes all at once. As an example, some people don't like swimming. Like as an example, I got a buddy over here that swims and he's like, come for a swim session. And I did it a couple of times and I was like, this just isn't for me. I love it. I was a swimmer when I was a kid. I had to do the 5 a.m. mornings. That's probably why I'm a bit adverse. But I was the same as you. It was breath work. It was mindset. It was full body movement. It's low impact. It's a really beautiful way to start in the water. So if you got sore joints and things, go swim. That's a great thing. Now, the thing that I've realized that is makes it a little bit more of a long-term thing is have a goal to work towards. So like if you want to do like a 5K swim in the ocean for cancer research because your mum had cancer, find a reason why it's important. That'll get you out of bed in the morning. And then from a more like a play and a functional point of view, if you don't like swimming, go surf if that's your thing. So for me, surfing, when I go down the beach, I remember when I was living in the Southwest, I'd go down the beach, I'd surf, and like I'd come out, the sun's rising, I'd have my juice and my coffee on the way there. I'd listen to some music. I'm already kicking a couple of goals, put a podcast on. So just even the drive on the way to the surf, I've already ticked 3 or 4 boxes. If I go with a partner, a friend, we have a really beautiful conversation, we connect. And then it's like you go surf. And I remember being down at Muttonbird Beach and, I'm surfing there and this pot of dolphins just like pops up next to me. Sun's rising over the thing. I'm like, whoa, this is like, I had this intense sense of bliss. And I was like, that's what we're chasing is practices that allow us to feel bliss, peace, inner peace, harmony more often than not. So whatever that is for you, find it. If you don't like going to the gym, don't go to the gym. Go do some functional stuff like do jiu-jitsu, do tai chi. I don't care. Find something that you really love to do. Do it with a community to begin with and then work into self-mastery. Because like you said, it's really hard to like start by yourself. So if you do want to start doing something, go find a community that you vibe being around. You might even meet your wife or your husband down there. You don't know. If you do something that you love, someone else probably loves the same thing. You're going to connect on a values point of view. Plus you then get to like do it with friends, make it fun. It's just so simple, James.
What's interesting as well is when I stopped drinking alcohol, I unintentionally started generating friends who didn't drink alcohol. It wasn't even like I deliberately put myself into an environment of non-drinkers. I just started to attract an environment of non-drinkers. When I became interested in health and vitality, I happened to meet and attract and generate friends who are into health and vitality. For example, I was in Bali and I was sitting in a restaurant and I sat down next to your partner, Ruby, who's a lovely woman, and we got chatting and we became great friends. And through her, I've met you, become great friends with you. And through our extended community of people, we seem, most of us seem to share a common interest in health, both physical and mental, common outlook, positive outlook on life, conscious communication, just like a zest for life or a half glass full kind of life. Doesn't mean there aren't issues that comes up and change, but that's kind of like designing your environment sometimes can be as simple as just being the type of person who you want to be. And that alone will naturally find yourself in environments of those kind of people.
100%. And it's really important as well because, after I went through that burnout at 25, 26, I then got called to do something else because I was looking for a solution. So I spent $100,000 getting my blood pressure checked. I was seeing doctors that were on blood pressure medications. They had bigger bellies than me, and they were saying they had to be on this blood pressure medication for the rest of my life. I was like, that just doesn't seem right. And then give me a $500 bill at the end and then a subscription for the rest of my life. And I was like, that is not health. That is not the thing. And then I started looking around and I was like, where are the solutions? Where are the solutions in plain sight? And I stopped focusing on symptoms and signals, and I started focusing on what makes me feel better. Solutions, finding mentors, finding people that had solved the problem, people who had been through burnout and then come out of it. And I was like, cool, I want to talk to you because you've obviously figured it out, versus someone who's never been through it, who's teaching about it. I had a lecturer who basically lectured me on pain, Max Zussman, and he basically finished university, became a lecturer, and then became an academic for the next 50 years. And he was so smart. But man, it was so complex. It was like, and then I met another guy, it was like David Butler, and he's like, oh, pain's in the brain. It's an output. Here's how you do it. You distract it with movement, blah, 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 blah. And you embrace it, you feel it. It was so simple. This is someone simple, this is someone complex. And what I realized, this guy had treated over 5,000 to 10,000 people and helped them actually move out of pain. This person had never treated a patient and spent 50 years just regurgitating information, staying in that thing. But Max gave so much benefit to the ecosystem of healthcare and science because he sifted and sorted through it and then gave information in a really beautiful packaged way that someone like David Butler could use and then share with the world. So we all have a piece to play. But it's like, I think the big thing there is the environment thing you touched on, James, is super important because I had to make a shift and make a change. And there was this opportunity that popped up when I was 26, 27. And my buddy was going through alcoholism as well. My best friend, grew up with him, loved him. And we'd go out on a Saturday night and his eyes would just glaze over and go black and then absent, gone. Next thing you know, I'd be picking him up in Mandurah the next day, like 100 kilometers away from where we left him, And I'm like, shit, how'd you end up here, dude? He's like, I don't know, just blackout. And we had this thing where like I need to do a detox. I just needed to, because I've got an addictive personality. I'm like an all or nothing type of guy. So you can use that addiction to your benefit. So I wasn't an 80-20 guy. I was black or white. So it's either you do it or you don't do it. So I was like, all right, we're going to do a detox cleaning. We're going to do it for a month. And initially I thought I was just doing it to support my friend. But then, man, I was like, after 2-3 weeks, I felt so freaking good, like intermittent fasting, mostly plant-based, no alcohol, no fake food, no Franken foods. And it was a bit like, I was kind of like over here and I just swung it fully the other way for 30 days. In 30 days, kidneys started to regenerate. And then we were like, shit, we should go for like a full blood cycle, like 16 weeks. So then we kept it going for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months because we felt better, James. So it was like, once we tuned into something to make us feel better, we kept on going. And then all of a sudden, after 4 months, we're like, oh, let's go back out and hang out with friends. And then the social thing happens. Hey, Rawls, why aren't you drinking? Hey, why aren't you drinking? Da, 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 da. And I had to learn to get this thing, like, because I was such a people pleaser at the time, where I was like, I just have a beer. And then like you feel shit again. You're like, damn. But then we learned to, like people would never ask us a question if we had like soda water and lime in it, and we're just kind of cruising around. And I still buy my mates drinks. I'm like, hey, you want a beer? Get myself a soda water and lime, and then carry on with the night. Get through the night, no issues. No one's asking about it. Had a great time. No hangover the next morning. Go surfing. And I remember the decision was like, do I want to like get hammered tonight and have a hangover tomorrow? Or do I want to like have fun, leave at 12 or 1, and then wake up tomorrow morning, go surfing? And once I started making those little shifts and decisions, I started feeling better. I started chasing the feeling, and then it kept on going. 6 months down the track, my buddy broke through his own AA stuff, or his own alcoholism stuff. He connected up with an AA group, and it changed his life. He did that for 2 or 3 or 4 years, and he's still kind of, there to support. But he also had to leave that community to go on his own path and take full responsibility as well. And I'll be honest with you, James, I'm a healthy moderation type of guy. I love a beer with mates, but instead of having 10, I might have 1 or 2. You know what I mean? I got the Sardinia kind of philosophy of a couple of glasses of good red wine with friends, connection. It's okay. That's my choice. Some people might have to go black or white their entire life because they know that behavior represents a big part of their pain, and they might not yet have the mental emotional capacity to say no. You know what I mean? So I went from like 0% to 100%, and now I'm back on like 80-20 or 90-10. And I found my little happy medium. But it's choice, James, and I think everyone gets a chance to choose for themselves. And who's to say that Jim Morrison and who's the other one, Amy Winehouse or Kurt Cobain, versus the oldest living lady, who's to say that one lived a better or worse life? 27 years versus 100 years. These guys might have packed more experiences in 27 years than that 100-year-old did in the entire existence. So it's like quality of life versus length of life. And ultimately, every day we make a decision based on our choices. And, it can be simple, which is the beautiful part.
Rory, you mentioned before we started here that you wanted to offer our listeners a couple of chapters of your book, which is called Self-Care, Lifestyle Medicine for the People. Yep. By Rory Callaghan. Where can our listeners access or get that book and dig in more as to the choices that they can make?
Yeah, I think that's a simple thing, man. Like, here's the book, Self-Care, Lifestyle Medicine. And it's just a framework. Like everyone that I gave it to all my friends, that was the first thing. Like, do it yourself, impact your front doorstep. And you can get it online. I think what I'll do, James, is I just put out something for the close community and my friends and family. And it's basically go to selfcare.global/thank-you. Selfcare.global/thank-you. And I'll share the link with you. But basically, the first chapter's there. You can tune into my story. If anything about this inspired you, can read it again in a bit more depth, and you can, use it to inspire your own journey and share me a message. Let me know what you're doing. I'd love to be inspired by the steps you're taking. And then I've even taken a step further because I believe like health and wellness should be like readily available to everyone. So I've actually put the first half of the book up, and everyone can access that for free. And I might even keep it like that way forever. It's you don't write a book to make money. You write a book to have an impact. And one thing that might really resonate with people, and I'll share with this with you at the beginning, James, but on page 16 is this story about the rat park experiment. And I think this is the most relevant thing in addiction I've ever read in my life. And I'll read the piece. But basically they put these rats in a cage, and they gave them heroin water or water. They were isolated in a little shitty cave, almost like humans, like locked in a work environment, car, like the pandemic, locked in our house. We can't move, can't go outside, can't move freely, right? And sure enough, the experiment went on, and the rats all killed themselves. They took the heroin water, and they just drank themselves to oblivion, and they were just chasing some sort of like stimulus for this mundane life that they were somehow put into. And then, they were like, okay, the experiment's over. And then a guy comes back 10 years later, and he's like, whoa. What about we try something different? We're going to do the same thing. We're actually going to get these mice. We're going to put them in an isolated cage. So they've already got the water. They've already got the heroin water. They're already partially addicted. Then we're going to create a rat park. This thing is the most beautiful environment in the world. There's an abundance of cheese. There's connection. They can have sex. They can move. It's like utopia for rats. And something really interesting happened, James. Like the hypothesis was, the rats are just going to take the heroin water again. Both the water and the heroin water were readily available, but something different happened. By being in a nourishing environment, supportive community, having access to these daily rituals, the rats no longer chose the heroin water. And like no rats died. No rats died because this made them feel better. And they were already having so much health and happiness and connection in their environment that they didn't need to distract themselves or find a hit or find a chemical hook to remove themselves from that existence. And this is really important because it's like this one sentence might really hit it, but it's like, what if everything we have learned about addiction from a chemical and biological standpoint is wrong? It's not about chemical hooks. What if the effect and addiction of choice was simply just a response to stress, because the lifestyles, the finances, buying the house we can't afford, all that, the cars we can't afford, the stress, the boredom, so doing something that we don't love, living a life without purpose, being someone that we knew we weren't born to be, and like sitting in this environment and normalizing and thinking it's okay, suppressed emotions. So going through these experiences in our life, guys, you're going to have pain multiple times. When I had my first breakup at 17, Mum's like, yeah, you're going to have a lot more of those. And they're going to be different. They're going to hit from different angles, but you're going to feel it again. Like I was like, I want to kill myself. I didn't actually like do that, obviously, but you feel like it's the worst thing in the world. And then you have experience, and then your experience gets broader and you experience all these emotions. You learn how to flip it from, guilt and shame up to acceptance and forgiveness and love for yourself and love for others. You get the lesson, you move on, right? So the suppressed emotions and the environments that never really served us. So the solution, James, is as a collective, as a community, what if we created communities that support each other, and we created co-created these enabling environments like the blue zones of like Sardinia in Italy, Okinawa in Japan, Nicoyan Peninsula in Costa Rica, even Bali in a sense, where like all these addictions are readily available, but people are living such amazing, fulfilled lives that they don't need to escape it. And do you know what, man? Like the thing I'll finish with is like my dad at 41, he had a head injury on the streets, and something really interesting happened. I thought he was going to die. I thought he was gone. He was in a coma for 6 months, and we went to Shenton Park Hospital, and I didn't know this at the time, but we were going in there every day for week after week just to see how he was. Wasn't waking up. We thought it was the end. Half his brain was kind of hanging out of his head. We were like, it's done. And I didn't know this, but the nurse had a chat with my mum the day before I came on this specific day, and she's like, I think it's time. We're gonna turn off the life support. And I was like, I didn't know this, but I was sitting there with Dad, and I was just holding his hand, and he squeezed my hand. He squeezed it. Man, this dude's so resilient. Cats have 9 lives. He's got 20. Like the ability for the human to get through anything in life is freaking amazing. We are built to survive. We are built to thrive. Everything in our being is designed to live, which makes it really interesting that a biological organism would choose to take its own life, which is a whole nother topic of mental health and suicide in men, but that's something I'm really passionate about. But it's like, are we just in such suppressed environments, and like we're feeling so low, and there's these things like that are incentives to no longer live so that your family can have the money or something like that, and we link that together and we make these irrational choices because the container that we're living in just does not serve us. And it's like all of that kind of came to a head, and then my dad kind of woke up, and then it took maybe 12 months. He couldn't even paint. He couldn't pick a pen. He couldn't throw a ball. And next thing you know, like we got him into art therapy 3 to 6 months after. He started throwing a ball. He started painting. And then 18 to 24 months later, his paintings were beautiful, man. They were like, his fine muscle skills came back. Art was his therapy. Art was his purpose. And it was so interesting because when I was a kid, he was selling his paintings for $5,000 in 1987. After he had me, he wouldn't even put his name on it. And I was going around Fremantle, and I see his art pieces in these random houses. And I'm like, that's my dad's. I can tell. But it's got no name on it, so you never know. So he started, after he had the head injury, he started doing these really beautiful paintings. And it was so interesting. The initial paintings, like solitary people, solitary bush environments. Nature was his happy area. He was like a bushman. He would have been like Ned Kelly. But it was like, that's where he found connection. That's where he found peace. But these paintings all of a sudden really colorful, really bright, really blue. And there were people in them. And I was like, Dad, excuse me, what's up? What's like, what's up with these paintings? They're really colorful. It's not your style. And he's like, oh, it's just what I feel like doing. And it blew me away. And what I'd realized is when he had the head injury, he lost his long-term memory. So all the thoughts, all the things that had held him captive his entire life. Now, I don't recommend anyone having a head injury to like move past this, but he no longer remembered them. And from that point forward, he was happy and he was light. He went back to his hometown. He's still painting to this day. You know, like he's still restricted with some issues because of the head injury. But man, every time I chat with him, he's so happy. He's got so much love. And it's like, it's a beautiful end to that story, James, because it taught me the resilience of the human body, like its ability to bounce back through any pain, any trauma, the resilience, like not just the neuroplasticity, like a big heads up to the modern healthcare industry. He wouldn't be alive if he wasn't there. He wouldn't be alive if St. Pat's wasn't there. He wouldn't be alive if my mum didn't show him unconditional love. So this is what I mean when I say connection is the elixir to longevity. It's all of us or none of us, man. And if we want to break through addiction, it's we just got to have the vulnerability to speak like this to each other and allow ourselves to be supported and take some responsibility to just build by 1% a day, man.
Beautiful, Rory. The book is Self-Care, Lifestyle Medicine for the People by Rory Callaghan. What's the website again, Rory?
selfcare.global/thank you. And it's, I'm just saying thank you for going first. And hopefully one day, there'll be a kid like me that doesn't grow up with his mum or his dad because of something like this.
Rory, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We so appreciate you doing that, and keep doing all the wonderful stuff that you're doing in the world. And best of luck with the book, and hope that this helps get it to many people out there.
Oh man, just happy to be here. Thanks for giving me a platform to share the story. Hopefully it inspires someone. And if anyone, I love human connection. If you ever message me, I'll honor that and I'll message you back. And James, thanks so much for just creating this container, man. I know you're having a big impact in the world, and hopefully this helps you impact one more person.
Rory Callaghan, thank you so much. And to you, the listener, thank you much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.